Well, good morning. It's been a strange 24 hours for me, and I sit and reflect a lot this morning. Yeah, it was a strange day. Let me just get on with the title and the little blurb, and then we'll see where it goes from there. The title that I've selected today, as always, is 2012, and the topic is Viewing from Above the Fray. Okay. It's one of my strange mornings because of being in a semi-dream, semi-conscious state a big part of the night. Yes, more flying and floating, looking down at the familiar yet unfamiliar world below me. Some that were still grounded could see and even talk with me. For others, I did not even exist. Oh, and by the way, Channel 6 News, CBS, investigative reporter called yesterday during my interview with Diane Buchberger. We talked and exchanged emails later. I'm still trying to make sense of it all. And what I didn't even mention in the blurb is that last night Tony, Maria, and Barb, who are Oneness Blessing or Diksha givers, came and presented a Diksha program and a Diksha blessing, and each of them laid hands on each one of us in the room. And the irony was that even when nobody was standing in front of me laying hands on me, it felt as if somebody's hands were on my head, and the whole top of my head was feeling like, well, let's just say very lightheaded. Except there were no drugs or anything to induce that. It was just a very, almost like the top had been elevated and it was like just vibrating at a different level somehow. And that same experience came back in the meditation room this morning where I felt like hands were on top of me and my head was just really light. So the same sensation that I was experiencing last night, even even when we were standing talking after the meeting had ended and we were just eating and chatting, even then I could still feel it, although not as strongly as I could when we were in the more meditative state. But in my dream this morning, I mean, it went on for like 3 hours. I mean, I'd look at the clock and it's only a little after 1 o'clock, and I mean, I ended up actually getting out of bed at 3:30, but and then I came to the computer just a couple minutes before 4 o'clock. But in the dream, it's like I'm looking for my place. Where's my place? And I'm recognizing the setting, and yet it doesn't look exactly the same. Something has changed, and even in the dream, I can't quite put my finger on what's different. And I'm seeing people, and sometimes they're looking up and they're making comments to me or asking me questions. And I don't remember specifically what any of them were. I apologize for that. But what I remember was that there was communication going on, and yet other people. I mean, and there I am, not far above them. I'm floating and I'm looking, and they're just going on with what they're doing and oblivious to the fact that I'm even there. They don't see me. They don't have any recognition that there's something different that's going on right above them. And I have a feeling, as I'm saying that now, I have a feeling that that's how it is with some of our angelic or extraterrestrial friends. I mean, they're right here, but we are oblivious to them, or we don't have the capability of perceiving them, and yet some of us do. Some of us do, at least at times. Some seem to or claim to be able to have that contact all the time. I'm not one of them, and I don't claim to be, and for the most part, I think I just contact my higher self and I have impressions. I don't have the sense that I'm communicating with another being. Uh, Although I don't know how it all works. I don't know how it all fits together. I try to make sense out of it when I'm wide awake, and even in the dream I was trying to make sense out of it. But it was very strange, and it's still very strange. I don't feel like I'm ready to give an explanation because I don't have one. I don't have one that makes sense to me. So how can I give you one that'll make sense to you? Maybe some of you can give me some insight on what this is all about. But it's like in between the two worlds and trying to bridge them like I always do. And it's not easy. And maybe that's all the dream is showing me, that it's not easy to bridge whatever that other dimension is where I'm flying and floating with the one where I'm grounded and everyone else is grounded. It's not easy to link those two. And yet that's what I keep trying to do. I keep trying to link the known, the things that I know, with the things that other people don't want to look at. And that brings me to the wonderful interview with Diane yesterday. It wasn't actually set up, and I mean, we mentioned it the day, she contacted me a couple or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. She contacted me and suggested that we might want to do an interview, and I listened to one of her programs and said, yeah, I'd be willing, but that wasn't the right time. And she contacted me the day before yesterday, and she said, how are you doing? Would you like to come on the thing? And I said, we need to talk first. Anyway, she called me at 8:15 yesterday morning, and we set up an 11 o'clock for me to be on her program at 11 o'clock. And then, of course, when I got on there, I'm expecting her to, she acknowledged that I was going to be on the program, but she didn't connect with me and say, okay, let me just talk, and then I'll finish my stuff, and then we'll talk to you. I didn't get that. And so I'm frantically saying, why doesn't she see that I'm here? And for those of you that were on the blog talk radio thing yesterday and seeing the dialogue that I was putting in, I was getting a little bit frantic, but it turned out to be a beautiful interview. And right as I'm talking, I keep getting call waiting. Somebody's trying to call me, and I first ignored it. Then the second, just a few minutes later, it starts up again. And I said to Diane, talk for a couple of minutes. I got to see who this is, because somebody's being very persistent. And my granddaughter's school had called me earlier in the day. My granddaughter was pretending to be sick, I found out later. And they couldn't reach her mom. Anyway, long story short, the call was from a CBS affiliate, Channel 6 News, an investigative reporter. And I told him to email me, gave him my email address with its contact number because I didn't know what it was. And in fact, it was a private name, so it wouldn't have even showed up on my caller ID. But he did email me his phone number about an hour later, and I finally was able to actually have a conversation with him. And after explaining to him my situation, that the lawyers bought my house for $100 and there's never been a mortgage on the house, and explaining to him the situation, he says, well, I don't think I'm going to be able to help you. This is more than I thought it was going to be, and I don't think I'm going to be able to do anything for you, but send me some information that backs up some of the things that you've been telling me. And so after our conversation, I created an email, and I'm going to read you the email that I wrote to him so that you understand some of the dialogue there. Hello, and I give his name. I appreciate the fact that you called me, and I realize the enormity of what I shared with you, especially if you were hearing it for the first time. The bottom line is this in all foreclosure cases. Without the original wet ink signature note, there can be no lawful disclosure or foreclosure. Copies of negotiable instruments are null and void, the same as copies of currency would be null and void. The use of copies in foreclosure proceedings is dishonor in commerce, theft, racketeering, counterfeiting, and conspiracy. It is fraud, which has no statute of limitations. And then I say, see attachments, all of which have been properly notarized and filed with the court. And I sent him 3 of my documents from all in February. Then I continue. In my case, they not only admit that they do not have the original, even if they did, they cannot change a contract without the consent of the parties involved. This property was never named on any paperwork of a contractual nature. Without the proper paperwork, neither the bank nor its attorneys have any standing before the court, and any judge that grants standing unlawfully is also committing fraud on the court. How far down the rabbit hole are you willing to go? How much courage are you willing to muster? Sooner or later, even the mainstream media will have to tell people the truth. Our banks and our courts have been committing massive fraud against the people of the world. No investigative report is more important than these revelations. Yet, even if you do your homework, it is unlikely that your bosses will allow you to run with what you discover, at least not until certain factors change the situation. My feeling is we will not have too long to wait. Here are some articles for you to consider. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And there's actually, I have a closing sentence at the end, which I'm not even going to scroll down and read. I don't know how far down the rabbit hole he is willing to go. And for that matter, most people that aren't communicating with me when I'm in that rarefied state where I can fly and float, most people aren't going to get it. Even as I said on the interview with Diane yesterday, they don't get the language of what we're able to see when we do some of the down the rabbit hole work of digging this stuff up. When I was first told how money came into being, that the bank doesn't lend anybody money, whether it's a car payment or a mortgage or a personal loan. The bank doesn't lend anybody money. Now that's incomprehensible to almost everybody that would be hearing that. Incomprehensible. The bank does not have money to lend, and it's not allowed to lend the money that they're holding in trust for their depositors. It's not allowed by law to give that money out. They're holding that in trust. So what then are they lending? They're not lending anything at all. It's all a fraud. It's all a fraud committed by the banks. And the money, guess where the money is created out of thin air? We think the banks create money out of thin air, and they do. When they print up this bailout money and stuff like that and run the presses, they are creating money out of thin air. But in the case of a car loan or a mortgage, where is the money coming from? Well, the borrower is creating the money from our promise to let somebody else in on our creativity and our labor. Our signature becomes a negotiable instrument on that document, and the document then becomes money. The borrower is giving the lending institution money, actually giving them the money. And they turn around and they bundle that piece of paper with other pieces of paper, and they call it mortgage-backed securities or mortgage-backed derivatives, and they sell it. So they've risked absolutely nothing of their own. All the risk is on the borrower, but it's fraud because they didn't tell the borrower that the borrower was actually giving them something of value, which they deposited in their accounts as an asset and then multiplied it times 10 or more. fractional reserve banking. It's all a Ponzi scheme, absolutely without a question. It's dishonor in commerce, it's theft, it's racketeering, and it's counterfeiting, and it's conspiracy. And when they use copies of those documents, that is a totally unlawful act, even if they have legislated rules on the book that says they're allowed to. They can't make null and void the truth. And the truth is a copy of a negotiable instrument is not a valid instrument. Period. It's not. There has to be a wet ink signature, and furthermore, the banks never signed the note. Why? Because then they would be putting their signature on the fraud. So they never sign them. Find any one of your papers. Show me, show yourself, convince yourself. Where did the bank sign this? It didn't. So this is stuff that came out yesterday, and I'm still trying to put all that happened in the past 24-hour period together in my mind, and it's not going very well, thank you very much. But I share this with you, and the most important thing to get is what I've talked to you about, the financial system and how the monetary system works. It's really important that everybody ultimately understands this so that they can't keep sweeping it under the carpet and trying to make new rules that allow them to be fraudulent, which is what they try to do and what they've always been able to get away with in the past. They just make a new rule that says fraud is legal. Well, fraud is never legal. And the whole commercial lending industry, the entire monetary lending industry is a fraud. Not just in the United States, not just in the Western world, but the entire world. It's all a fraud. That's what's happening in 2012. We're awakening to that, and the house of cards will collapse, and these people that run these scams are going to get arrested. I believe it. I can't put all of those pieces together yet either. How it's going to happen, who's going to be the enforcer, I don't know the answer, but it's coming. It's coming because divine justice will be meted out, and the world is going to be set on a completely different course. I know that. I've seen that for a long time. The hows, I don't know. But the whats, I definitely do. We're moving into the golden age. It will be an age of enlightenment, an age of abundance, an age of creativity, an age of literally heaven on earth, where we finally are able to co-create a world that works for the benefit of everyone rather than only a select few of the elite. Thank you for listening and allowing me to share with you yet another day. Namaste.